I think this entire fight that's being told to us that humanity faces today, which is to solve the climate collapse problem, or different names again, global warming, climate collapse, climate change. I think the best way to look at it is that we are not saving nature, we are actually fighting it, like we have been fighting since the first human arrived, evolving from chimps, and first human arrived, and since then humans have been fighting nature. Think about it, like where we were positioned in the food chain, we were the easiest predator to be hunted upon by other predators. But now we are the most apex predator because humans had to fight what nature it gave us, and they invented fire, and that's how we were able to command over other species and grow this big. I think climate collapse problem that's been put forward to us is just, it requires another invention, like coming up with something like fire, so that we can bend nature again to our will, and then we can grow from where we are today to the next level of civilization. I think the viewpoint that nature is our friend is is just shallow, because it's not our friend. It's always coming for us, and I think it hates how big we've grown despite the lack of abilities we got compared to other animals. I think nature is not really our friend. Maybe or borderline. I think it hates us, but it's on us to overcome that problem and grow as a civilization. But I came up with this viewpoint today, and I think there's something interesting. What do you think about that?
So yeah, I mean, I like how you're giving nature a personality and debunking the natural standing opinion that nature is very friendly, nature is something that we need to look after, nature is something that we need to save. But you're painting an image where nature is danger, nature is the main villain, and I like the way you're saying how nature comes at us, and maybe nature doesn't like us much. And if we go by your theory, I think nature has enough reasons not to like us, because we've been bending nature to our will ever since the first civilization has been formed on this planet, right? And even though your objective is aligning with the objective of many of the climate activists, right? So eventually, what you want to say is you want to find a way where we continue our present consumption levels, but we bend the nature so much in an efficient manner that nature doesn't have the capability to kill us, which is the eventual goal of any climate activist.
No, 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 no. Climate activists are not.
Okay.
I think what I'm hearing from them is that we should respect nature, we should bend, we should change our choices. Like we should travel less, we should eat less meat, we should eat less poultry, and we should apparently accept the vegan diet. I think their goals are misaligned. They're telling us to change ways and bend to nature rather than us finding a way to bend nature.
So I would say that the goals are aligned, but the means to the goals are not aligned.
Yeah.
While they say you have to cut back on consumption, what you're saying is invest in innovation to make sure that because creating fire is innovation, right? Creating fire is not something that early man have. They did not cut back upon anything. They've invented a new tool. They've invented, or probably they've discovered a new way to uh, battle nature, and then also to increase their population and to safeguard their village or their tribe from predators. So I think your perspective is about inventing something new to battle climate change, while we ensure that the consumption is at the same level. Whereas most climate activists say the only way to battle climate change is to cut back on our consumption. But is climate change real? This entire question is also very popular, right? I mean, everyone is talking about whether climate change is a hoax or not. With that regard, what is your opinion? As in,
I think why people question even climate change is real is, like I told you, you have all these people coming at you all the time on your news feeds on social media that our choices are causing the problem, like us creating this podcast, people watching this on YouTube, all this is consuming energy, and all of this is causing climate change. So apparently the best choice, if that all that is true, is for us to go back and live in the forest, or for us to not exist at all, then it's the most eco-friendly thing. So that is why, I mean, because of all that is why people want to cling on to this hope that maybe climate change is a hoax, as you know, some politicians also want to use it, because that's better than believing that, you know, change all our life choices and there is no hope for us. That is the reason people want to believe that it's hoax. We don't know exactly the, I mean, nobody can really establish the fact through data, because all the data everybody submits, like the vegan cult submits their own data and says that meat production is the number one cause for climate change, which is absolutely bullshit. And then the other cult submits their own data and says that is the number one cause. So through all that data and all that multiple claims is again why the claim that climate change is real gets muddied. But from our, we should go back a step, two steps back, and say from our understanding of science, we know that the way we burn fossil fuels to generate energy, which generates most of the energy in the world today, is bound to release chemicals into the environment, which will generate a natural warming effect. Now, can the Earth sustain this warming effect, or will it go into a collapse? That, yeah, I mean, scientifically, like people want to just believe science blindly here, but the claim that that warming will lead to a collapse is based on running some simulation models. We don't know for sure, right, whether that will lead to collapse. We've only been here for maybe a billion years or so, and the most advanced science we had is for the last 200 years. So we don't know what happened before that. The history is not accurate. We don't have the record of that. So it's also possible that the Earth can sustain that temperature change. But let's roll on with science and say, okay, the models that they've created, the climate models, they are accurate, and let's say that whatever they're predicting, that this change in temperature will lead us to a collapse. That ties in also with our understanding that yes, the actions we are creating or can cause a temperature rise. That's all we know for now.
No, but the data clearly shows the rate of change of temperature, right? And
Yeah.
over the past 3 decades, I think the rate of change of temperature has accelerated more than anything since the end of 19th century. So I think forget about science and its simulations for the future. If you take a look at the past and see the data about the rising sea levels, the melting polar ice caps, the rise in global temperature, the hole in the ozone layer, these are clear indications that our actions throughout the industrial civilization, industrial revolution, have created this massive impact, which is very detrimental to the environment, very detrimental to Earth. So
This
there's no denying the fact that climate change is happening. But I like the standpoint that you're taking, where you are against the climate activists, but you're not on the other side who are the naysayers of climate change.
I don't want to like absolutely get behind science and say, like, act like a science believer and say, yeah, no, what science says is true, because your claim is based on simulating a model. The claim is not like we absolutely know the truth. Your claim is based on models. So I think I also have that standpoint that okay, we are right now believing what our simulation models are showing. It's not like we know the base truth. It's there's a probability, surely it's greater than zero, that the Earth can sustain whatever we are giving it. There is a probability greater than zero that we will not see a climate collapse. And I don't think any scientist can deny that there is a probability greater than zero. If we don't cut down on our activities, we will see a.
Yes, and the when we're talking about data, right, and the credibility of this data, a lot of these global organizations have made wrong predictions or have miscalculated a lot of things. For example, uh, just under a decade back, we thought there were just 400 billion trees on planet Earth, but this German guy, his name is Tom Crother, right, and he made a simulation using local communities and manually counting the number of trees in dense forest areas, mapping them with satellite imagery, and then he found out that there are more than 4 trillion trees already on the planet. So the entire UN campaign of let's plant a billion trees has changed into let's plant a trillion trees now. And the same thing happened with the amount of carbon dioxide that the oceans capture. So in the entire carbon cycle, ocean takes up a huge chunk of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. They have recently found out that the oceans are capturing more carbon dioxide than what they anticipated. So I think it's an ever evolving conversation. It's a continuous discovery process.
People believing science like a cult, like they just believe in science. I mean, you question anything about climate change, you will get absolutely shot down very bad. That you are a non-believer, or you are some religion activist who's just questioning science. I think that approach is not going to help. Science only works if there is a healthy debate, when someone questions and you provide them valid answers, and if you agree that yeah, you don't have 100% answers, because obviously nobody has all the answers. And I think the problem around the entire climate change and the climate activism is this, that they are not ready to be asked questions. They are not ready to be asked questions on how accurate their claims are. They are hiding behind the models, and that's giving them the shadiness that the cause is right. As I'm saying, that we agree that yeah, the problems are there, but if you go and act like the shady, that's why you have these naysayers, and you have politicians who are also questioning whether these claims are true, because you're not coming through transparent. You're not claiming transparently that no, we don't know all the answers, but from what we understand, we know that there's going to be a collapse. You got to claim that. You cannot claim that no, it's absolutely going to be a collapse and we will dictate what the world should do in the next few years. Nobody's going to listen to it, and that's why there is a debate right now whether we should listen to these guys or not, because we are acting like an elitist who knows all the answers, and no scientist in the world knows all the answers.
So let's discuss about the actual causes of climate change, right? Like I understand that a lot of people throw a lot of different things, and like you said, based on different agendas that they might have, or different scientific journals that they've read, they want to conform to that and they want to believe in that blindly without asking questions. But factually speaking, what are the top causes of climate change?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of causes, like you said. Major cause, I think they call soil erosion and all, but I don't think they are main causes. I think the main problem is about the temperature rise and that having snowball effects. And the main proponent of that is how we generate fuel. We burn fossil fuels, we generate energy,
Energy.
and this process has a chemical reaction which generates greenhouse gases. Now let's look at this infographic that I found on one of the Reddit threads, which said, there are all these different sectors which are emitting greenhouse gases, which is polluting our environment. Now if you look at that, what are the causes? We are generating electricity. That is one main cause, but
Almost one third of
one third of
30%, right?
one
Yeah.
third of it. But if you think about how important electricity is, still just one third. So there are lots of other sectors also using fossil fuels generating greenhouse gases. If you look at, you have agriculture and forestry, that itself creating 20% of greenhouse gases. The transportation industry, now we are seeing some electrification, but again that is also contributing 20%. And you have this industrial sector itself, where if you want to make steel or iron or specific products, the manufacturing process of these products itself has chemical reactions which generate greenhouse gases. So even that's there. But if you look at where the main effort needs to go in it, it's got to be in electricity. Like if you solve that, we solve one third of the problem. I think industry will be the most difficult, because you can't change the fundamental process of generating iron or making steel. You can't change, or making aluminum. You cannot change the fundamental process behind that. It's going to take a longer time to cut down the emission there. But the place where we can solve right now is electricity and transportation, and that's 50% almost.
And to imagine that we already have a solution at hand, obviously it's a little uh, tricky when it comes to making policies about nuclear power. But nuclear power is a very clean energy that has zero emissions. And a country like France, which sources almost 75% of its energy from nuclear power, it gives a very exemplary source of inspiration for other countries to adopt more nuclear power, research a lot about nuclear power safety, and we can phase out into nuclear energy, I think, which is going to be much more uh, you know
Yeah, this coincides
it
very, very likely with what Elon Musk tweeted, that why are we not pursuing nuclear energy? I
yeah,
think,
US has just 9%. I mean, think about the biggest nuclear power in the country sourcing just 9% of their energy needs from nuclear.
I think there's a very nice irony related to nuclear that I found recently, that it's more costly for developed countries like US or the European countries to set up nuclear plants than to set it up in India and China. And it's a very nice irony, right? It's an advanced technology. The developed countries it should be easier for them to do it, but apparently their costs are so high that they can't make that move. Whereas developing countries like ours, we can make that move.
And I think that's a beautiful thing, right? Like you can now these developed countries can actually create industries in the developing nations and phase out and you can empower these developing nations with this new technology so that the developing nations can cut down their fossil fuel emissions and they can use nuclear power and they can export nuclear power. You know, the developed nations can actually gain a stake over these companies or figure out a model in where you just don't blame India or China to cut down on their fossil fuels because you have to reach some climate goals. Because when
There's a little hypocrisy about
exactly
calling us
right,
out. Like
yeah,
you've become developed through the means
fossil
of
fuel, yeah,
exploiting cheap fossil fuels, generating cheap energy. And now you've grown to whatever level you've grown. And then you set up some Paris summit and tell, these countries should cut down on their emissions. I mean, why are you? For us, the priority is to become developed. As I said, with all the shady things around how true the claims about of climate activists and climate scientists are, we don't make that a priority right now. Our priority still is to
obviously, because
become a developed nation.
a lot of people in India are trying to live on a survival basis,
Yeah,
right? And even if you take the infographic about the amount of metric tons of CO2 per capita, US alone is 4 times that of all the other the average of a global citizen, right?
yeah, and it's multitudes of times above India and China.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it's this hypocrisy around this elite countries trying to look down upon and make developing countries more and more guilty with regard to the amount of emissions that they are causing. I think it's very it's yeah, like we said,
That's exactly elitist agenda that's being
it's an
driven
elitist agenda.
because
Yeah.
they only now social media gives them a tool where they can influence us, where they tell us that our life choices are causing the problems, while all we are doing is traveling for basic survival or
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
look at
eating for basic survival.
look
But
at
we are supposed to be the ones to cut down on emissions while the developed countries live in their own first world comforts.
yeah, and even if you look at this, the earlier infographic about how much percentage of emissions each industry is causing, take a look at what an individual consumer, how much impact can he do while cutting down his consumption needs. There's not a lot of delta that he can create, right?
It's a very weak argument because they are now finding it helpless because they cannot move away from fossil fuels. They do not have the power to move to nuclear because it takes at least a decade to establish a power plant and a lot of investment goes into it. They're just running away from the blame. I mean, as you said, there's no delta. Even if they accomplish whatever their agenda is, say they make the entire world vegan, okay? What is the contribution of meat production to greenhouse gases? It's 18% for entire agriculture and forestry. Let's make it half of that is meat production, so
No, not half.
10%.
They gave, right, like 2 gigatons.
Yeah, but let's be generous. Let's be generous and say that this data is not very accurate. Let's work with the vegans and say, yeah, 10% is 10 to 15% is what meat production is. It is not. It's lesser than that. But even if you do that, the entire world becomes vegan. Then you cut down on 10 to 15% of greenhouse gas emissions, and that's not solving the problem.
No, but let's say the world becomes vegan, they should consume something else, which
Yeah,
is going to
you're
compensate for that.
you're not
And
counting on
if
that.
you look at the amount of gigatons of CO2 that rice cultivation is doing, it's just half of what meat production is doing. So if you are removing the entire meat consumers from a meat diet to a rice diet, immediately the amount of rice that you need is going to increase, right? So it's a very weak argument. It's an argument that is not backed by any sort of data, right? So uh, I
I
just
mean,
think that this entire PR messaging that it's the individual who has to change his lifestyle to create some sort of effect in the environment. It's purely it's purely out of it's a manipulation technique, and we have read about the different scams that these big oil companies have done. to create this sort of a narrative around carbon footprint and stuff.
Yeah, where they shift the blame away from themselves
Yeah.
to others. Like Apple saying, I'm not giving you a charger, so I'm generating a low carbon footprint. I mean, how silly can that get? I mean, a user needs a charger. He'll get it from you, or if he'll get it from somewhere else.
No, and even the entire topic about carbon footprint, like how carbon footprint as a word, as a phrase came into picture. It came into picture when British Petroleum has actually hired a advertising agency to polish their image about emitting too many greenhouse gases. So this ad agency has come up with this beautiful idea that uh, the individual human should calculate how much carbon footprint that he has over a decade or over his lifetime. And now on every flight booking website, I see how many CO2, how many kgs of CO2 I'm burning in order to fly from Bangalore to Hyderabad. The entire focus, which ought to be on the industries and the industries which are causing maximum amount of greenhouse gases, is being shifted to an individual and is blaming the individual to cut down on his consumption, to encouraging him to live in poverty, or encouraging him to live in an inconvenient situation while they continue to do whatever they wish. So I
Like,
think this is a mass manipulation scheme that actually worked out, right? And because everyone is talking about carbon footprint now, and even now you mentioned, right, about uh,
Apple.
Apple talking about carbon footprint. And if they really want to cut down on their plastic wastage, then they should not release a new phone every year. People like Greta Thunberg are saying that don't fly. They're saying, like, let's say you want to go to the United States, go on a ship or go on a boat, much rather, and
And get eaten by a shark.
use your mechanical energy to
Get eaten by a shark.
use your
The,
mechanical energy to roar until United States. So I think that's a very very childish, and of course she's a child. So that's a very childish solution, and it's something that won't work because again you're going from an efficient state to an inefficient
this is
state.
the exact problem. If you go on a boat, a shark can eat you. You go by flight, you won't. That's exactly how we live. We live by fighting nature. We don't live by backing ourselves and becoming food for nature.
What about the convenience of it? As a human civilization, things have to become more and more convenient to us. Whether
Exactly.
it's food production, whether it is travel, whether it is logistics, it has to be convenient. And so
Convenience is how we grow as a civilization. If we don't make things convenient, we do not grow.
yeah.
As our entire pursuit of convenience is how what makes our civilization grow and how we become the topmost species in the food chain. If we come across an alien species who are more efficient than us, then they will become our predators. So we have to actively always be more efficient. That's the entire reason the whole evolution game goes in the direction of becoming efficient, because that's how you ensure survival. So inefficient solutions are absolutely like the one you said, go by a boat. You're never gonna take it.
And if you take a look at the macro picture, right? Look at how many gigatons of aviation fuel is causing. It's just 1 gigaton out of 300 gigatons.
Yeah.
That's so less. And with that, a small CO2 emission, you are able to enable mass transportation for so many people, increase so much convenience for so many people, and a lot of people's livelihoods depend on it. A lot of business happens.
There's a big economy that's around it.
Exactly. And you want to cripple this economy and you want people to live in poverty. And we've always observed that whenever there's an economic downturn, the first people that are affected are the ones who don't have enough money, the poor people, right?
Exactly.
And poverty is directly linked to the number of deaths.
Yeah.
So in order to save someone in the future, you're ready to kill people who are living right now.
That's exactly why, again, you have naysayers believing the climate change is hoax, because they don't want to listen to all this and say, no, you got to cut down and you got to go back into poverty. You cannot have this aims of owning a car. You cannot have this aims of going on a international holiday because you have to save the climate for your next generation. We don't want to believe that. I mean, that's you want us to live such a life. That's the exact reason why you have naysayers and you have people who are agreeing with naysayers because of this entire elitist argument.
But I think the issue is on both sides, right? It's being a naysayer is also is being ignorant. You're being ignorant to a very massive detrimental threat to the environment and hence mankind as well. And we see, so yeah, but like you said, there's a environment of distrust that develops whenever people are talking without reasonable solutions, or whenever people are talking without actual data backing it. And we've observed this in I've recently watched a TED talk about this person who's called Alan Savory. He has proposed a very radical solution for climate change. What he said was, um, in order to create more restoration projects, or in order to create more, make sure that not more land gets desertified, you need to breed more cattle. And he was, that video immediately went viral, and a lot of vegans have directly attacked him, and a lot of scientists also were questioning his approach and were questioning his claim. So in the video, Alan shows, um, different pictures of before and after he has worked on a huge acres of land, where he advocates that if you use the cattle, and if you use animals properly, and if they are allowed to graze, and if they are allowed to um, you know spread their dung all over, and then trod upon it, it's going to create enough, uh, it's going to create
Enough
enough,
ecological growth.
no, yeah, ecological growth, and the right amount of the right environment for more plants, and the right environment for the soil to get more enriched, so that it can stop desertification, and also increase more and more plants to grow there. So it's a very radical thought, but then it was debunked by scientists saying that that's just not possible, because increase in grazing has actually caused more desertification, and it's factually proven. So we've got people pushing their own agendas, pushing their own theories, and it's very difficult for a layman or a common man to understand which one is to be believed and which one is not to be believed.
I think that what we need is a discussion on what we can do to solve without making an average man lose his economic status. You got to give me a solution which can do that. Don't tell me that you got to cut down, you got to go back into poverty, and that is how we'll save climate.
And it is not
That's
like
not a solution
and
anybody's
it is
gonna buy.
not like renewable energies are, they're not efficient, and they're causing a lot of ecological damage as well, because let's say you're converting uh, like tens and thousands of hectares of land into solar farms.
Into wind
What
farms. Wind
Yeah,
farms are even more area usage.
wind farms kill a lot of birds, right? And wind farms are a direct threat to a lot of low flying birds, and there are a lot of birds who got killed, and who are being who just dropped dead even today. And talk about solar farms, they're occupying such a huge land mass. So what about the ecosystem that's living there? You're displacing that. So the
I mean,
fundamental problem,
people can even listen to the theory about renewables, right? But let's say even if
but it's
they,
inefficient
it's
as well.
inefficient, exactly. So neither does the sun always shine, and you don't have wind
Exactly.
all the time,
So
and we
are
don't
you
have
okay? So are we okay with going with phases of power cuts in our
fix
life?
that exactly that solutions we don't want to listen. We don't want to listen to solutions where we got to go backwards. Nobody has got the patience to go backwards. Okay, everybody wants to go ahead in life. Like who's when someone who's in lower class, he wants to become middle class wants to become higher class, and millionaires and billionaires, so on.
Hmm.
Nobody's got the time to listen to a solution where you few set of people have to go backwards while the elite will live like the elite,
Yeah.
but the lower and the middle class have to go backwards. Nobody wants to listen to solution like that, like use renewables and accept 6 hours of power cut. No, you're not going to do that.
But unfortunately, the lower class citizens, they don't have a say. They don't have an equity in the power circles, right? And that's I mean, but obviously, because they are a majority, I think it works in a way where in democracies they can actually vote for the right person in power, and that's what happened when they voted for Trump in power, right? And Trump just shrugged away the entire climate change, saying that, hey, you know what, a little bit warmer weather is not bad.
He cared for the people who voted him, and they wanted a comfortable life. They didn't want to listen to this theory that their end is coming in the next 10 years or so. That's so that we don't want to listen. Tell us that there is an enemy coming for us, and how will we fight that enemy. Don't tell us that the enemy is going to kill all of us, then I mean, why would you want to listen to that
But
discussion?
look at the politicians who are advocating for climate bills. We can see both extremes over here. People who are saying completely no, people who are saying we need change today. Like the AOC's the New Green Deal or New Green Deal. It advocates for spending $93 trillion according to one of the estimates to cut down all emissions by 2030,
And do
and
what?
and so that you can prevent Earth from getting warmer by 1 degree centigrade over a period of the next 40 years. So
But
now that
how do they do that?
so how do they do that? Massive employment and massive research and innovation investment in green technology. Again, there are a lot of
Why
fundamental
not spend
problems with.
$93 trillion and convert everything nuclear?
Yeah, exactly my point, right? So these climate activists have a problem with everything. They have a problem with fossil fuels. They have a problem with windmills. They have a problem with solar farms. They have a problem with nuclear power plants as well. And I'm sure that there are some opinions about the safety about nuclear plants and stuff which are genuine. But at the same time, if you're complaining about a problem, you have to give a solution, right? And the solution cannot be regressive. The solution cannot be like the four solutions Greta gives, right? Like cut down on air travel, and the other one was what join an NGO. It's a legitimate solution that she's giving. Join an NGO, and the other one is to vote. Right? What are these solutions? These solutions are not really solutions. There are non-solutions for
The,
very serious problems.
the regressive solutions climate activists give make me feel like if they were around caveman times, you wouldn't have seen fire. They would have said fire is a threat to the environment.
Of
I
course.
mean, as you said, we need a solution. We need a solution to fight. We don't want to know that we are ending tomorrow.
Right. Single invention of fertilizers and maintaining nutrients in the soil, it helped us in increasing as the number of species. And then the population explosion that happened since then until now would have been wiped out if climate activists would have gone behind these kind of new technologies which are harmful for
If
the
they were
soils,
there,
right?
yeah.
And if they knew that in the future such fertilizers would cause 2 gigatons of CO2 emissions, so they would much rather that this population explosion and these humans did not exist in comparison to
No fire, no technology, no fertilizers, zero zero carbon footprint life. Man in the
so
forest.
man in the forest or man outside Earth, man non-existing on
Man
Earth.
non-existent, slowly wiped out of Earth. A zero carbon footprint.
So that's such a ridiculous thought process. Ideology is, it is fair to say that people with this ideology would trade a billion lives to reduce 2 gigatons of carbon in the air.
Yeah, exactly.
And do you think we should accept any sort of solutions from people with such ideologies?
No.
No, it's very regressive.
They are the ones who are bowing to nature. As we said, it's about making nature bend to our will. That is how we have come this far. That is how we'll go further. That. I mean, you can laugh, but that's how civilizations get advanced.
I agree. I mean, it's a fact that if you don't observe it, you're just blind.
That's how civilizations get advanced. Advanced civilizations will do that. I mean, someday some advanced civilization will find a way to build a Dyson sphere around a star and harness energy. Are they respecting nature or they're just bending it to the way they want it? I mean,
True.
that's how any civilization will get advanced. There's no point going regressive. You'll just go extinct. What is the path down regression is going extinct. There are problems with nuclear power too. Not like, I mean, as we're talking and saying that yeah, we should take that solution right now. Not saying that it is some sort of carbon free heaven. The reality is no energy source is carbon free heaven. I mean, in every sort of energy source is going to be transportation and mining and all, which are going to add to some sort of carbon footprint. If you look at a couple of studies, again, what I'll show you will highlight the problem with data inconsistency. One study, the one that I'm showing you now, is the one from WISC, who are an institution set up to educate people about the problems with nuclear energy, a sort of an anti-nuclear power group. And if you look at their chart here, right, it says uh, coal generates 1034 grams of carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour, whereas nuclear is generating 117. And even solar and wind have some sort of carbon footprints. Photovoltaic cells map to solar cells, and that's 33 grams per kilowatt hour, much below nuclear and much below coal. But even if you take by this anti-nuclear group study, nuclear has a 10 times less CO2 footprint compared to coal. But if you see another study which is done by IPCC, which is an intergovernmental panel on climate change, and this study has been shared by the World Nuclear Association, who are obviously a pro-nuclear group. They show that the CO2 footprint of nuclear is around 12 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour of power, and coal is 820. So there's an obvious data discrepancy, people making data to suit their own agendas. But even if you take somewhere in the middle, right? I mean, I think there was a UN study which also put the number as somewhere between 3 to 110. A large variance is possible. And the problem, I mean, the reason because of the variance is, where does the carbon footprint of nuclear come in? It's not in the energy generation process itself. It is in the process of building the nuclear power plants, the construction, and the activity to mine uranium, the activity to transport uranium, the activity for refining it, the activity to dispose of the waste. That is where your CO2 footprint is coming. And based on the methodology used in generating power, and also on the methodology used to analyze, the footprint could vary. So it can be anywhere between 10 or 3 to 110, 117. But even if we accept that the number is on an average around 70, 80, it's still a fantastic deal. I mean, it's very close to what solar is giving you in terms of CO2 footprint, which is around 40 to 50. Even if you take it's around 80 to 100, I mean, it's a massive drop down from what you're getting from coal today, almost on a scale of 10. And you can build in enough carbon suction agents. I mean, there could be trees itself, or we have some technology right now which is being developed
Yes.
to absorb carbon dioxide off the atmosphere. Making the carbon dioxide footprint 10 times less makes it at least technologically feasible to deal with these greenhouse gases, rather than say, nuclear is also not carbon free, so we will not take this solution. There are some activists who share this and say, nuclear is also not carbon free, so but no energy sources, right? That's what we're seeing.
So I think more than just the carbon emissions, the activists are also worried about the nuclear waste, which is radioactive waste. But obviously, with correct measures in place, it can be stable and it can be securely sealed away from the
Being exposed.
civilization, right? And I think that is a very, very valid point where the amount of burden that lies on not just the companies like Climeworks who suck carbon out of the air, but also the ecological system, right? The amount of burden that is on the ecological system right now, when our energy sources are emitting almost a kg carbon dioxide for every kilowatt hour. Compare that with 12 grams or 30 grams. It is decreasing by such a huge level, and the burden comes down massively, right? The burden comes down almost 90%.
I think getting back to the problem of nuclear safety, right? When the Fukushima accident happened, Japan took a strong stance that they will, act on their 50 or odd nuclear reactors in their country, and they will, close it down. Worldwide, there was a movement to act on nuclear reactors and put them down because of the safety problem. But what we have seen in the last few years, they are all going back to nuclear power because, we understand there was an accident and there was a threat, but technologically we are overcoming that, and now
Right.
that's why everybody is, on the up to adopt nuclear power, because that is a clear solution to the problem of generating energy. And that's what we're seeing. I mean, even Japan, when they said that they will act on the nuclear power, but in the recent years they are going to start, they said going to start building more. So, I mean, the concerns about safety, if they were really so bad after the Fukushima accident and after governments across the world saying we'll cut down on nuclear, they wouldn't have made a U-turn
Right.
and start again investing into nuclear if the safety concerns are so great.
And Japan had 30% of their energy completely accounted for buy nuclear energy, right? And then they cut down, and now they have plans of increasing to 22% by 2030. And in the scheme of all things, like I was just searching how much, where does India stand? Can you believe that we stand at a meager 3.9% of our entire energy being produced by nuclear?
Yeah.
And uh,
Because
if
NGOs are a nuisance in India.
NGOs are a nuisance globally.
But in India, it's bad. It's really bad. They're gonna stop you from doing any kind of meaningful developmental project. NGOs are gonna be a pain in the ass for you.
And also, do you think India doesn't have homegrown nuclear solutions? And we,
No,
like,
we
if
have.
you take, no,
We
we
have.
have,
How did you develop our nuclear weaponry?
no, like nuclear power plants. Right now, we have imported the technology from France,
Yeah.
and there is a lot of research happening over here. But I think if we reach a stage where we are able to clear out our dependencies from foreign countries to come in with their R&D to make a good nuclear plant, I think that's when we have much more flexibility on the costs. We have much more flexibility on implementation as well.
But even right now,
And
it's more cheaper to make a nuclear power plant in
in
India
India, obviously,
based on the same France technology that we want.
right. So, but and also with respect to NGOs, I think educating and making them aware of the holistic problem statement.
Oh, it's not that they're not aware. It's not that they're
No,
not.
I think they are not aware.
It's not about NGOs.
So are you saying that they're scheming this and there's an agenda
So
behind all of
people
this?
may not be aware completely, but
Right.
NGOs are absolutely there to be money grabbing. So there's a project coming up, they want a cut in it. Okay, that's what they're there to do. They're a business by the nature. My NGO not an actual not profit for public association. They are there to get their cut. So they'll stand in the way of any kind of meaningful developmental project unless they get their cut, and then they're out of it.
I think I think such a blanket statement would be unfair.
Maybe except for a few NGOs, I think the rest of them. I mean,
Yeah.
what is the reason for absolutely going behind proper power source and which can make our country so self-sufficient? I think there was one nuclear power plant that was supposed to come. I forgot the place where it was heavily opposed, and somehow the NGOs convinced the local public that this will destroy your future generations to come, and the entire public rallied behind them, and the nuclear power plant idea was cancelled.
So I think I just looked it up. It's the Kundankulam nuclear power plant in Tamil
Yes.
Nadu
Yeah, exactly.
and Jaitapur nuclear power plant in Maharashtra.
You're absolutely not allowed to come up because because these guys somehow convince the public that this is gonna endanger all your future civilizations, and they successfully managed to not let nuclear power come to India. That's these guys are the biggest problem. I mean, these guys are behind the entire Project RA problem in Mumbai too. I talked to someone who lives in Mumbai very recently, and he said it's such a pain to commute right now, which would get solved so much if the metro got built. But no,
No,
NGOs are not going to
yeah.
allow that.
What is the forest that they're trying to save?
I think RA forest only.
Yeah. So what's your take on convenience versus having empathy for nature?
I think there's no space for empathy for nature. If we see, like right now, we see that the actions are gonna cause a problem to us itself, it's gonna make the place not habitable, then we act. I think there is no place for humans to show empathy to nature because anyway, nature doesn't show empathy to humans. There is no equation, there's no scope for it. We have to do what serves us best, what helps us become more efficient. I think, I mean, it's not like I'm some anti-nature guy, but that's how it works.
Yeah, it's
If
about setting priorities. I
Yeah,
mean, if so many people are struggling on a day-to-day basis with commute,
solve that first, yeah.
we need the metro.
Yeah, I mean, 2000 trees will plant it somewhere else. I mean, yeah, that's for humans. It's got to be us the priority, not nature. Nature is not our friend, as I told.
And it's a small blip in the
Yeah.
globe in such a massive problem. This is such a small blip, and when it's able to create so much impact in people's lives today, in current situation, people should just understand that they should get out of their elite uh, pedestals. They have to understand the plight of the common man, and just stop complaining and stop
I
trying
think
to
I think
vote
some of
against
the NGOs are
development.
purely scheming. Then there are some of the elites who want to stay relevant in the limelight, acting like environment
So it's
activists.
like virtue signaling, you're saying.
Virtue signaling, exactly. So that, and as you said, who should be the priority? Now they will say, no, nature is the priority. Humans cannot be selfish. Virtue signaling. Humans have to
Right.
be selfish. Life is selfish.
Yeah.
The gene is a selfish thing.
Yeah.
It wants to mutate and multiply. It cannot be selfless like prioritize nature. Then the gene will not exist.
Right.
I think some of it is just lacking common sense. I mean, the way some of the activists act. We are all propagating for a nuclear power solution here, but of course, there's another solution with renewables. The problem, as you said, is that they're not reliable enough. I mean, as you talked, are we really going to accept renewables and say there's going to be a 6 hour power cut every day and stuff? I mean, no, but what is the solution to that problem? The problem with renewables is that if you depend on wind and solar, sun doesn't shine every day and there's not going to be wind on each day. So some days are going to be excess of wind, some days are going to be excess of sun. On those days, we need to find a way to effectively store energy which we can use when there are blackouts. For that, we need large energy banks, which we don't have right now. I mean, lithium ion batteries
No, you
can't really
can't.
cut that.
No, you can't do that. But these, we were watching that video about water batteries, right?
Oh, I now I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, so Switzerland has finally finished that project. Like after 14 years of construction, they've finished a massive water battery, which has a capacity of 20 million kilowatt hours, and it's actually the equivalent of 400,000 electric cars, right? And water batteries is not a new technology. It has been there since 100 years, but the way that people have used it have not gone mainstream until now. I mean, this is such a massive water battery. Of course, there are challenges in constructing a water battery as well. It takes up a lot of energy, civil work, and resources. But they are a very effective way in combination with renewable energy sources to kind of solve the energy problem, especially when it is intermittent in nature, right?
Yep. I mean,
So
yeah, I forgot totally about water batteries actually. Yeah, I mean that's they are a possible solution because you can store a lot of energy through the water battery mechanism, and I've seen the video of how they're implementing in Switzerland. Absolutely, I mean that's geniusly good, and it's such a clean way of storing energy. I mean, millions of times cleaner than lithium-ion batteries, but
yeah, and it's good to see that the United States, a lot of states have actually invested money and built their own water batteries, right? So you have almost 18 states investing in it and creating these water batteries. And
yes, I think again that's where the problem comes in now, is that the investment cost that goes into creating them. I don't know what's the cost of the Switzerland project, but that's the problem is again that burn in the pocket
hmm,
to go through that process of establishing that and betting on renewables. You either bet on nuclear, then you bet on creating the power plants and all the investment for creating it, investment for managing waste and all. You bet on renewables, you bet on effective battery technology like the water batteries. You got to make a bet at somewhere, as we said, like without it's a solvable problem, but the way we are looking at it now is how can we solve the climate collapse problem without anybody suffering a damage, which is not going to happen. But we can solve it through investment. We invest in water batteries and we go the renewables route. It's a fantastic solution, I think.
I think it should be a combination, right? It should be, we should find the sweet spot of nuclear, renewable energy, and also natural gas or the fossil fuel. Because there are disadvantages for both. Let's say, even if you're storing energy in a water battery, or even if you're fully nuclear, there is that issue about scaling up your power supply in peak hours. That's where obviously you need fossil fuel. And just because it's creating some sort of damage to the environment, you can't ignore the fact that there are genuine needs for us in times of crisis when we need to increase our supply of energy.
Yeah, there's gonna be CO2 emissions. They're going to be there. We're not gonna deny that, and they're gonna be there as long as human civilization exists. Because any energy source, as we showed earlier, has a CO2 footprint, and the lowest ones are not the most efficient ones. So
Right.
there's going to be CO2
And the
emission,
lowest ones are more expensive as well.
more expensive as well. So there is going to be CO2 footprint. The entire problem we're trying to solve is bring it down enough so that it doesn't warm the earth faster, and we find some way to absorb this emission out of the
Exactly.
atmosphere. If we find that sweet spot, I think that's good enough, rather than totally cutting ourselves off and reducing our energy usage to zero. That's not a viable solution. But the main challenge is that politically everybody's got to be aligned.
Exactly.
Politically there has got to be an alignment. The reason that's not happening is because of these multiple people having multiple agendas, driving multiple claims. Why not all come to a standpoint and say, let's make everything nuclear? That's a solution. Make everything nuclear. Let's take that solution. But we are not taking that. We are gonna go in circles and debate nuclear is not safe. We don't. Solar is not efficient. Wind is not efficient. You got to take one solution. Either let's take, if you take solar now, make everything solar. You cannot. You do not have the resources to create such big solar panels. Same thing with wind. Wind does not generate enough power. You have the option of nuclear, but we will not take it because we cannot get political alignment for that.
But even look at how inefficient solar is, right? There's an expiry date for each and every solar panel. So
Yeah.
you've got to keep replacing it every few years, which is absolutely inefficient, and which is it's just
Even the
stupid.
elements involved in solar panels, it's
Lithium
not like,
extraction, yeah.
yeah, you're not gonna get even abundant of them to make everything in the world solar. So there's physical challenge there. That's not there for nuclear.
And also to create that, you have to dig up a lot of minerals, which is again causing ecological damage, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, nuclear is the way to go, right? I mean, every smart individual agrees with that, and it is very refreshing to see Macron change his stance, like the
Exactly.
French president, right? So in 2022, before his re-election, he announced that there are going to be 40 new reactors that they're going to build over a period of time, which is very positive, because back in 2018 or 2017, even France was actually trying to take a step of cutting down their nuclear energy. France, which is supposed to be the most inspiring solution for global countries, where usage of nuclear produces 75% of their electricity, they wanted to cut it down to 50%.
Because of the agendas.
And these agendas have to stop. And I see a positive change, because now that he got re-elected, it shows that the public opinion is starting to change, and the public should be more aware and more educated about the efficiency of nuclear power, and how nuclear power can actually solve a ton of problems, including climate
Exactly.
problems.
If you look at this infographic that we showed earlier about sources of greenhouse gas emissions, if we solve electricity and if we solve transportation, which you can solve through make everything electrified, make transportation electrified, and you generate electricity through nuclear, then 45 to 50% of your greenhouse gas emissions is solved there. Like the rest of
but
is
but I would say that okay, but it's not that easy, right? Like, and it's not that quick.
not that
So
quick.
if
Yeah,
we
it's
have
10
to
to
create,
15 years of effort. Yeah.
yeah, 10 to 15 years of consolidated effort across different countries.
Hmm.
And it's not like you can just hand over a nuclear power plant to a country that's not really reliable. So there's that geopolitical tensions and geopolitical risks as well.
So
We can't just go to
this is a
North Korea.
genuine risk. This is
Yeah.
a genuine risk that some countries, because if you have a nuclear power plant and you have the technology for a nuclear reactor, a lot of countries, I think even India is one of them, who have used that know how to become a nuclear power. I think, we should just accept that every country is a nuclear power. There will be peace. The entire thing that nuclear power has brought is peace. We should leave that aside and
No,
look.
there can be rogue nations, right?
There
Like
can be rogue
Russia's
nations. Yeah.
or the North Koreas, and we don't want more rogue nations. Or see, it's like if you
That
have
is that is
fragment, if your risk is fragmented across the globe, it's very risky. It's absolutely risky, because you just need one country to go rogue in order to create a very devastating
See,
effect.
that is your political alignment, but that's why I said in the first, right? The entire way to look at this, and that's how you will get political alignment, is that you're fighting a bigger enemy, which is nature, which is coming for the entire civilization. So none will have a chance if you don't actually address it in this way. If you fight this, have these inner fears, then we will not going to address it, and then we're eventually, as the model show, which may or may not be true, is we lose. So somehow, when you have a solution, maybe you have to just solve this political alignment issue and just get on with it. Maybe we take the risk with rogue nations. There's got to be a risk somewhere. I think what we are seeing on the other side of things the best solution that I think exists is to us to accept that this enemy is coming for us, and how we can escape from that enemy unhurt is if life leaves the biological realm and it becomes something metal like cyborgs, and that's another direction we're going. We're going to solve and come up with AI, a general general intelligence. I think it's a logical evolution to me. That is the best solution right now, which we are on course to take. Becoming cyborgs and digital intelligence. If you look at this, I think when I heard the term metaverse, I could totally connect the dots. I felt like, when I watched the movie Matrix and they showed me the solution of machines cultivating humans as a source of energy and humans living in a digital world. And then we had this climate collapse problem. And even in the Matrix movie, if you see, they have a total climate collapse situation because humans blew out the sun, right? So you have that solution, but life is still sustaining. Now we had the same exact problem. Now there's this robot controlled by algorithms who comes up and says metaverse is what he's going to create and everyone's going to live there. I think when I connected the dots with all this general intelligence coming up, the metaverse being created, and we having climate collapse, I found that this is the perfect solution. That there's gonna be a world of cyborgs who for whom it does not matter if the world has a climate collapse and then there's not enough oxygen, there's not enough, the temperature is very bad, it's very high. It doesn't matter for cyborgs. They can sustain that life, and I think in the metaverse concept, you could have AI avatars. Like you could have an avatar for Alexa, Siri, and all these living amongst and competing with humans, and that's maybe where you will grow digital intelligence, and maybe that's a logical evolution of life. I don't think why that step may not happen if we don't take any of the solutions. If we don't take any of the solutions and we actually see a climate collapse, that's our best solution, like transition into cyborgs. And I don't think I'm the first one who's suggesting this. I think some way back, even Elon Musk said that is an efficient state we'll reach, because cyborgs are more efficient in maintaining life than biological humans.
Sure, but it's all about measurement as well, right? What is efficiency for you, and what is efficiency for someone else, and what is the biological need for a person like me, and it's different for someone like you. I think one thing that we have to also observe is that we are hugely underestimating um, the, the 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 value of the natural ecological system, right? Of maintaining this carbon cycle, because we are not able to even calculate the data in a proper manner, right? And this German guy who I spoke about, Thomas Crother, he gave a very realistic expectation of how we can achieve absorption of all the 300 gigatons of carbon that's being emitted uh, by just reforestation. He has found out um, thousands of hectares of land across the globe, which are very close to local communities, where the soil is rich enough to plant and create new forests, and the resulting forests can capture massive amount of carbon dioxide from the air compared to what we are already doing. So I think solutions that are a mix of nuclear solutions, that are a mix of this ecological restorations, are much more efficient than just transitioning into a metaverse.
Into a
Because yeah, into a cyborg.
matrix-based world. Yeah, I mean, it's
I appreciate Wachowski brothers' fictional story, and I enjoy it on the screen, but it's a very scary proposition.
it's a very scary
It's a very unsettling.
It's a very unsettling outcome. But all I'm saying is that if at all we have a collapse, and if the earth becomes uninhabitable for human biological life, then we have a way out, and that's what our friend who's controlled by algorithms works on. Becoming like cyborgs or accepting the matrix type solution is a very unsettling position. But I have a even bigger unsettling problem that came into my mind before, and then I found out that there are a lot of other people who are also unsettled about this problem. It is that, as we talked about, right, the problem with accepting nuclear energy right now is, or any form of solution for the climate collapse situation is that there is lack of political alignment. Now, what if you didn't have you didn't have the problem of political alignment, right? Think of you lived in a world where there's a single world government, a communist heaven. If you lived in that world, then you don't have this problem, and then you can implement whatever policy you want to solve climate collapse. And this most unsettling thing about me this is that I've read about this on a lot of communist pages. But what unsettled me more is that all the climate collapse or climate change pages, and these guys have a lot of synergy. I mean, I've seen one page reshare the communist page, or the communist page reshare the climate change page. I mean, what very unsettling to me is that what if this entire thing is an agenda to get us into a communist world? I mean, that's I don't know if that is more scary or the cyborg reality is more scary.
So is like, so is China the solution for climate change according to these people?
But
So China is the most well placed in terms of economy and the communist agenda to push through whatever they want if they are aligned with the climate activists.
if the communists in power had climate as a priority, then this kind of system will make them enable that policy as easily as possible. But that's where I felt. I mean, again, who are the one of the biggest naysayers of climate collapse were Donald Trump and his supporters. And I found and I understood why, because one of them even made this meme poster that I found, which said, "We don't fear global warming, we fear global government." I mean, absolutely, we fear it. If we are going to have a communist world government, absolutely situation, a lot of us fear.
So yeah, a lot of people dub the AOC gang as socialists as well, and a lot of people say that they are borderline communists. So without them even realizing it. So I think there is a massive synergy between climate activists and communism, and it's very relevant when you look at their policies, which would say, tax the rich for 90%. No, I mean 90% tax. I just can't believe in which world would that be considered fair? Yeah.
But I think, if you take away the unsettling outcome, right, the problem itself is not unsolvable. Like we've discussed the solutions, like there are solutions to replant trees to absorb carbon off the atmosphere. There is a way to take away 50% of the greenhouse gases emissions through electrification and through nuclear power. There are various solutions, and the problem, the enemy itself who we are facing is not someone that cannot be brought down. It's not an unsolvable problem, but entire problem comes is that you cannot solve it without it making a dent in everybody's pockets.
Right.
It is going to make a dent in everybody's pockets. I think that is a fact that we
No, I
could
think it
accept.
should make a dent in the government's pockets more than the
Yeah,
average human being. Because once we say that it's a function of money, then we are eliminating that section of society who cannot afford it.
exactly. I mean, when government is spending, it's basically spending the taxpayers' money. So there is gonna be a significant cut in your pocket. You have to accept that. I mean, what did kingdoms do when they faced a great enemy? They had to spend in the warfare, right?
Yes.
Right now, the way they look at how to address climate change is how can we fight this enemy without incurring a significant cost, while you are facing the worst enemy humanity has faced, possibly something that can make us extinct. You are
So
looking at
you
that.
so you think that this is an extinction level threat?
Yeah, I think I agree
In
that.
in what timeline?
As I said, I maybe it's not. It's possible that it's not, because our understanding is through only through whatever science we understand, and through simulation of climate models. Based on that, maybe it's like 100 and 150 years. But I mean, we cannot be sure. As I said, there's a greater than 0% probability that there is not going to be any climate collapse, and we can continue to consume at the rate and burn fossil fuels at the rate we are doing. It is possible that it can be sustained, and the probability of that it being sustainable is greater than zero. But I choose to believe, from my understanding of science, that these activities still contribute and create a climate collapse situation where humans cannot live anymore. I think 150 years out somewhere where that may happen. But I mean, right now, if you all are agreeing that there is a climate collapse coming for us, then you're looking at a very big enemy that's coming for you, who you want to fight without burning a hole through your pocket. and that's not doable. I mean, physically not doable.
So in my opinion, I think nature is not an enemy. Nature is indifferent. Like nature doesn't care whether humans live on the planet or not. And I think that's the beauty of being a human, right? Being a human, you can actually take that conscious choice of safeguarding your interests and safeguarding other species interests as well. And as apex predators, we have that decision to make where we can keep consuming and exploiting nature, or we can strike a balance in making sure that there's a coexisting system that exists. I mean, the whole purpose of us having this intelligent life should be used for something like that, rather than just resigning to nature or going back to Stone Age and
No, 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 we
living in
don't even
caves.
use that. As I said, I think if you don't address it, my unsettling solution is the one that's gonna come into existence.
It's very
It's scary. It's scary, but as all I'm saying is that it's not gonna end for us. Definitely, at the end, if there is a climate club, it's not gonna be an end for us. We may have a different kind of existence. But if you want to continue the way we are, I think we should definitely there should be a significant effort to take up one of the solution. And as I said, without making a dent in the
but I,
budget, it's not going to happen.
but I think people are you know, there are some initiatives which are really good. Like if you see the Great African Green Wall, right? They want to kind of capture at least 250 million tons of carbon every year, and they are planting a huge wall of forest across Africa, right? And then even our neighbors Pakistan have done a phenomenal feat. They've already planted 1 billion trees, and now they want to plant 10 billion trees. And UN is taking this 10 billion tree plantation as their first step in the trillion tree reforestation program. So there are these good initiatives that are being happening around the world, and I think more such initiatives have to be um, created, but they have to be created in sectors which will create maximum delta. So if it is reforestation, we are rejuvenizing the ecological system to capture carbon. If it is energy, we are reducing the amount of emissions by using a clean energy mechanism that does not disrupt a lot of lives, both ecologically as well as humans. So I think these solutions are much more optimistic, in my opinion, rather than resigning to the fact that this is how it's going to be. And
Yeah, you're not resigning, but I think all those are going to make a small delta unless you solve the energy problem. I think the energy problem is the uh, big problem that has to be addressed.
an
And
energy problem solves
without addressing energy, I think all the rest moves are just is just moot. I think just trying to do small things which won't matter in the long term.
and if we are able to solve the energy problem, it not only helps us in cleaning up the air, but it helps us in desalination processes, making sure that more water is accessible to people. Because the biggest uh, bottleneck for us with regard to drinking water is energy, right? Like if you are able to find an energy efficient way, which you can use the seawater, desalinate it, and give it as drinking water, that's going to be
Yeah, I mean, if you get
life changing.
if
And
that's
again,
again
that's an energy problem. So I
that's
think we
again
have to
comes back to
solve for
nuclear.
energy, but then the entire globe has to understand that switching your lights off for a couple of minutes or a couple of hours is absolutely nonsense,
It makes no
right?
difference.
It makes no difference.
It's just silly marketing to make you feel happy for a day that you saved something for the future generation. I mean, none of it's gonna happen if you don't make the
So
energy
as an
transition.
individual, what is our takeaway? Like as an individual, how can I make sure more, because I can't create nuclear plants. So as an individual, how do I contribute to environment?
I
Is
think
it by cutting down on my flight travel? Is it cutting down on my energy consumption? Or is it
I think the
being
best
indifferent to this
the
and making sure that I take care of my well-being and my development,
the
my
best the
economical.
best way I think is to give it back to climate activists asking you to make individual choices and change your life and tell them go and tell the persons people in charge that solve the energy problem and accept nuclear. Tell them that. Don't tell if someone tells you stop eating meat, tell them this is not a big problem. Solve the energy problem. Why are you coming after me instead of solving the energy problem? Push them towards priority one, which is energy. If someone comes to you after priority two, like you eating meat or you traveling like an international holiday, I think people just should just hit back at whoever comes at them and saying you are causing anything like hurting the environment. No, we are not. We are just living our lives. It is
So people should live their lives, and
live
people
the life.
should live their
And
lives and ensure that of their economical development, and ensure of their safeguard in terms of their family,
yeah,
so that they can vote for the right person
right people.
who's going to bring in nuclear power
Yeah,
or
like push,
solve the energy problem.
push all these activists who are coming after you to go and solve the energy problem right now. And unless that's going to be done, you're not going to do any of these rest, because right now they're going to use, if you accept becoming vegan, they're going to use it as a leeway and say, oh, I've cut down this carbon emission, so I don't need to cut down that in the fossil fuels. If you accept their entire marketing scam around carbon footprint, they'll say, okay, some Apple will say, I have not given charges, so I've reduced carbon footprint by so and so. So we don't need to cut down this much of greenhouse gas emission at the fossil fuel level. If by accepting all these secondary problems, secondary solutions, we are just giving the people in power an option to not solve the energy problem.
And I think these are not secondary solutions as well, they're
They're
non-solutions.
non-solutions, but they're making solve non-problems and non-solutions, and getting away with actually solving the main problem, which is energy. And I think that's what an individual's got to do. That whenever he sees someone telling them this agenda, whenever there's someone's asking you to make small changes, no, I'm not to make small changes. Make the big change, right? Solve the energy problem. Go and solve that. Don't come after me and tell. Go and hold and do your protest or spread your agenda to the ones in charge who can make this change.
So I think this should be called as the carbon footprint shaming.
Yeah.
Because you know about these celebrities who fly in private jets are also being tracked by individuals and organizations, and they're being
Shape.
yeah, they're being shamed. So there are a lot of these petty pursuits which absolutely have to stop today.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I really like in the last few years is that there's a lot more conversation around green energy. I think we should give it to the activists to do who have done that, right? So they have at least brought the conversation to the table, and now every media channel talks about it. Every company has a green policy. Everyone is talking about it, but they're just not talking about the right items.
They're not talking about the main problem. That's my exact issue with climate activists,
Yeah,
right? Nobody is telling us that this is the main problem and this is
so
what's
this infographic has to go viral.
yeah, they're just running away from the main problem and saying all these different things. This solves main problem, right? I mean, it and get done with it. I mean, why do we have to keep hear this year after year? I mean, I've been hearing it since school, like what, 14 15 years now, that we are having an environment collapse, we are going to have a climate collapse. Why should we hear this year on year? We have a solution, take it, solve it, and get done with it. Let's get on with our lives. We don't want to hear this climate problem year on year. It's not fun to listen, really. I think, I mean, why don't we solve it, right? When we have a solution, because we cannot take it, we're not brave enough to take the solution. We are just creating all these other loops around it and going around them. As you said, how do we trust rogue nations? How do we invest? Just align politically and just get done with it. It's
No, I don't think it's that easy. There
if
are
everybody
rules,
aligns, if everybody aligns, it's a
and that
matter of
that
capital.
itself, yeah,
It's a
that
matter of
itself is a
capital.
huge if, right? If
Exactly.
everybody aligns.
It's a human thing. It's just a mind thing. Why can't everybody align?
So climate change is real, and the solution is nuclear.
Climate change is real, then the solution is real. We know the solution. It's just that we are not brave enough to take it.
Out of this entire conversation, I think the takeaway for the audience is you can eat how much ever meat you want to eat. You can fly wherever you want to fly, how many ever times you want to fly.
You
There, there is absolutely zero
you
reason.
can you can watch whatever you want on your phones, on YouTube, and consume power.
You don't need to worry about whether you've switched off the lights in your home or not. You don't need to double check how much energy you're consuming. You don't need to calculate your carbon footprint at all.
Absolutely. Makes no sense.
So just stop feeling guilty, because this is not a problem that you as an individual can solve, or should even try to solve. This is a problem that systems, this is a problem that institutions like governments and organizations like the UN has to solve through policies.
through policies, through getting at an effective and efficient energy policy,
Yeah.
and stop putting the blame on layman and forcing him to and allowing these elitists to make us tell us what choices we should make.
Because it is absolutely similar to that ad one of the leading plastic manufacturers made. I think it's for a Coca-Cola bottle or something, where they made an advertisement where there's a native Indian walking through a forest. He's enjoying the forest, but when he comes onto the road, he uh, he looks at a lot of plastic litter all around, and then he feels very sad. And a car passes through and throws another bottle onto the road. So the message of the ad is to for the public to be aware and to be conscious and don't litter anywhere. While the message is on the surface level, it is fine. The actual cause of this litter is not the public, but it's the manufacturer. And even over here, with respect to manufacturing CO2 gases,
Yeah,
public is just the
the
consumer.
consumer is not, yeah, consumer is not the problem. Give us energy in a way where you don't produce CO2, and as you shown, you have a solution.
Because we need energy,
Yeah,
and we are paying you for energy.
yeah, you're refusing to take that and asking us to cut down is just foolish and just purely for political reasons. You're not taking the solution to go to an CO2 less carbon emitting solution, and instead putting the blame and allowing all these activists to put the blame on us is just doesn't make any sense to us.
So, Santosh, what will you do when climate activist is trying to guilt shame you about using more energy and flying from Hyderabad to US?
Yeah, I'll tell him how much am I causing, and I'll ask him how much does he think is the power plant causing, which is giving him the power to use his phone. I'll also ask them, are they planning to go and live in the forest in the meantime? That's the question I'll ask them. But because if they're not doing that, then they're also gonna have a carbon footprint, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, but I will ask them also this: that what are they doing? What are they doing? So it's an activist. They care about this problem. So what are they doing? Are they raising the question about energy policies? And or are they just trying to stay relevant by propagating some woke propaganda on Twitter and all and blaming laymen?
Yeah.
That's the question I'll ask them.
So that's it for today's discussion. I think I hope we were able to bring to light a lot of facts that we've collected through a tiny bit of research of our own. And please feel free
And I
to.
hope we were able to unsettle you.
Yeah, and I hope we were able to inculcate that courage in you so that you don't feel guilty about your carbon footprint from now on. Just take care of yourself, and if any of you have interesting articles around making nuclear energy more safe, or what are the problems with nuclear energy, or what are other ways or forms where an individual can participate in this fight against climate change, please feel free to share it in the comments. Share interesting bits of our conversation with your friends, and I hope that we can create some sort of a dialogue where I've seen a lot of people reaching out to me personally after our last episode. I hope that dialogue can also happen in our comments, because then a lot of people can witness that healthy exchange of ideas.
You're all the time online, so just drop by a comment if you want to discuss anything. We're always happy to discuss.